Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call our meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this afternoon. Introducing the panel members is we have Marla Bellinghurst, and to her left, Mr. Ron Stenning, and representing the city from the Assessment Department is Rodney Pontanella. And our recording secretary is Cara Belshaw. We'll be hearing an application for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking on these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparison of assessments are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will mail to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the decision of the board in respect to application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this afternoon, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each of the applicants following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after all applications has been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor and or assessors, or maybe just the one.
Will you swear on the Bible or affirm without?
I can do the Bible.
Please state your name.
Roddy Pontanella.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll swear in.
Okay. A swearing?
Yes.
Oh, please state your name.
Sure.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
We'll swear in Mr. Leslie or affirm him.
Swearing?
I'll swear.
Please state your name.
Kenneth Thomas Leslie.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, we will deal with St. Mary's Road, 1070.
If I may, actually, I think Mr. Newman and Mr. Ponatella have reached an agreement, so maybe just for brevity's
Okay.
sake, they can.
Is that,
Oh,
oh,
sure.
okay, is that in
Go
regards to Weatherton
675
Avenue?
Weatherton.
All right. We will and we'll get you sworn
Please state your
in.
name.
Mark New.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna deal with 675 Weatherton Avenue. And there was a recommendation by the assessment department, so you may proceed.
So I'd like to begin by reading out the civic address that we're dealing with, which is 675 Weatherton Avenue. The roll number is 1209-773-9000. And we have a recommendation that we have proposed. And it's a recommendation for $1,597,000.
Do you have copies for us?
I have one copy.
One copy?
I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think it probably.
Okay.
Okay.
We can get copies of it after.
Yeah, do you guys
Okay.
want to just see
I
it?
will just want to have a look here.
Just read it, Mark.
And The recommendation is $1,597,000. Mr. Newman, are you in agreement?
I am.
All right. And the reasoning behind that?
What we did is we rounded up the square footage and adjusted the cap rate from 6.35% to 7.35%, which put it into another classification and reduced the market value on it.
We'll get copies of this after.
Okay.
So if you are in agreement, that's fine, Mr. Newman. I think that about concludes our business.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. You're welcome, sir. And we'll make copies later
Sure.
for panel members.
I can email the board as well if that's, whatever's better for you guys, I can do.
Whatever our secretary wishes.
Okay,
There's just the one file, so this will be
okay,
okay for today.
okay, thanks. And I will know in the future to make sure to bring copies.
All right.
If your trainer was a little more on top of it.
And now, we'll go to the first item on the docket, or really the second, but it's 1070 St. Mary's Road, so you may proceed with that presentation.
Okay, so the civic address for the property in question is 1070 St. Mary's Road. The roll number is 0800 380 5600. The property in question is a standalone restaurant, and it's currently being used as a dine-in takeout restaurant. If I can direct your attention to page 8, I have some images of the parcel in question. The first is a image of our in-house computer system that lists the property's location, and the second is a aerial photograph that also shows the property in question. And on page 9, we have some Google Street View images that were pulled from the October 2018 version that's currently uploaded on the system. And so this property has its income stream has 2,153 square feet of leasable area. We have it valued at $27.86 a square foot. We have, oh, sorry, on page 4, sorry, is the income stream. Look along with me. We have a vacancy of 3% that has been applied to the property. Shortfall at $7.50 per square foot. And with a cap rate of 6.5%, it gives us an estimated value of $870,000. Oh, for comparables, sorry. So the subject lease that we currently have on page 2 is for the East Indian restaurant that's currently occupying the space. It's an 8-year, 2-month lease, and its actual is $27 per square foot. I have included a list of 5 comparable properties that I used to bracket the subject property, and they range from $26 a square foot up to $35.31 a square foot. And I believe that's everything for our presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Leslie, questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've inspected the property, Mr. Fontanello?
I did, sir.
We met last week.
We did.
The restaurant is not a chain restaurant, correct?
It appears to be a local restaurant, that's correct.
On page 2, you, and again on, I believe on page 14 with the mailer, you indicate that the rental rate is $27 a foot.
That appears to be what's what has been given to us, yep, that's correct.
And then on page 3, you've listed a number of comparables.
I did, yes.
Would you say the $27 is a fair rate?
When you look at the characteristics of the subject property, its location on a regional road, the access that it has through the parking lot ingress and egress, given the characteristics, I would feel that it would be a fair representation of the value that's on the subject property.
In fact, 1074 St. Mary's Road on page 3 at $35.31. That's adjacent to the subject property, isn't it, Don?
It is, that's correct.
That's an A&W.
It is. That would be a high chain. It would be a high chain restaurant, but I feel the rental rate reflects that in the increase of $35.31 a square foot, and the comparables listed show a range of leases, so I tried to bracket it based on its quality of the restaurant in comparison to the other restaurants that were listed.
So the face rate of $27 a square foot is a fair rate,
I
is
would
what you're
agree.
saying. But on page 4, you use $27.86 a square foot. Is there any reason why you increased the rate?
Well, this is a model-driven rate that was determined, so it wasn't myself who put the rate on. It was created by the model, and it takes into account the many different lease comparable rates from around the surrounding area and the market region, and then applies a rate which has been put on the property.
But the 27, the additional 86 cents a square foot is gonna add value to the property. And you've stated that the $27 was a fair rate based on your comparables, correct?
That's correct.
But you've also stated that this was, you didn't prepare this was mass driven.
This was mass-driven, that's correct.
Is the 3% vacancy mass driven?
It is, yep, the 3% is the parameter that has been set for the assessment cycle currently.
And $7.50 a square foot is mass driven.
That's mass-driven as well, that's right.
The cap rate of 6.5%, how is that derived?
The cap rate is driven from various inputs in the model. Again, it's model-driven, and it has to do with the subject's location, its quality, the building effective age, the size of the square footage, and they all are inputted into the model, which then outputs the proposed cap rate on it.
Would you say that's fairly arbitrary?
I wouldn't say it's arbitrary. I'd say that there's many moving parts behind the scenes that are driving the model, and that I would feel that the value that's placed on in comparison to the other properties located nearby seems to be fair and reasonable.
If I go to page 6 for your cap rate information,
Yes, sir.
under the city of Winnipeg, in the 80th percentile, I don't see any numbers of 6.5%.
Are we looking at retail? In the
Retail, just retail, that's what it is, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the ranges are varying. This is just to give an idea of the 20th and the 80th percentile, and there is an appropriate range of cap rates, and I would say that this subject property perhaps might fall a little low, but it would still be within the range that's been allowed.
When you say low, like 6.5% would be low?
Well, I mean, it appears to be consistent with the range of acceptable cap rates that are placed on the property type. So to the best of my ability, I would say that that would be an acceptable cap rate.
Okay, this is a standalone restaurant.
It is.
So if the restaurant, and you also mentioned there was some parameters based on square footage.
That's right.
So this is 2,153 square feet, that generates a 6.5% cap rate
That's
for a locally owned restaurant. If it was a larger restaurant, would it have a different cap rate?
I'm not aware of that, sir. It would just, from my understanding, we're driving it from the model, and the model uses parameters that have been rigorously tested, and it provides the cap rate that seems to be appropriate for the property in question. And when you look at the surrounding properties, it appears to be in line and consistent with other properties.
Did you recalculate the value based on the actual rental rate rather than use the mass appraisal, or you just relied on that?
I believe
We did just to see
we
the
did.
difference, basically.
Yeah, we did take a look to see what the difference would be, but we had agreed that the current parameters in place appear to be acceptable for the property in question.
So are you saying that if I take the actual numbers and use the same parameters and cap it at 6.5%, I get 842,692. Are you saying that the difference is immaterial?
Nope, that's not what I'm saying, sir. I'm saying that based on the model's parameters, based on all of the information that we have provided and the information that we're working with, that we believe that it's fair and reasonable based on the property type that's currently in place for it.
And if the property was, say, over 5,000 square feet, would the cap rate be different?
There would be an adjustment for the cap rate. The cap rates are grouped into sizes, and the different sizes drive the different cap rates that are applied.
But it's a standalone. And
That's
so
right.
the risk inherent is either you have a tenant or you don't have a tenant in the whole building, irregardless of the square footage. Those are all my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Bellinghurst?
My questions have been answered, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stinney?
Yeah, this, on your page 8, there's, are there 3 businesses on this property or 2?
The property in question has one building that's on the parcel. So it would be one standalone restaurant at 1070 St. Mary's with parking surrounding it.
So there's actually 2 roll numbers there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, one of these is A&W?
The one directly beside it,
This one here,
that's correct.
and what is this one?
It's a building that has a Dollarama,
Ah,
and there's a Pizza. So that one building has 2 tenants,
yeah,
and then it also has a standalone restaurant that's currently being occupied as an A&W.
and the appellant may get to that, but is access available to all these 3 pretty much the same?
There is, yep, the access appears to be from one parking lot to the other, there's no barriers in between.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have no questions. Mr. Leslie, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, you have my submission. On page 6 is a copy of the Board of Revision order for the 2018 realty assessment roll, revising the value from $720,000 to $648,000 for the subject property. On page 8 is a copy of the recommendation by the assessing officer utilizing a cap rate of 7.5%. So it appears to be that the issue that I see is that the assessor in his evidence has said that the $27 is a fair rate, but then the model uses $27.86, and there is no adjustment to the value for the additional 86 cents a square foot because the model believes that still to be fair. Although the evidence provided is that $27 a square foot is a fair rate. So I'm not sure why you have to impute a higher rate. But the bigger issue is the increase in the cap rate from 7.5% to 6.5% from the 2018 assessment cycle to the 2020 assessment cycle. What I've done is I've recalculated the gross rent instead of on the assessor's brief on page 4, instead of 59,983 to be 58,131. I then deducted a vacancy loss of 3%, which is 1744, to an effective gross income of 56,387. I then have 2% of expenses, which is 1128, 2% of 56,387. The shortfall is still 484 to have an NOI of 54,775. So that's the actual NOI, which according to the testimony is a fair rent. This is a non-chain restaurant. It's not the A&W, which is one of the comparables. It's not a Pizza was one of the comparables. It's not in a major shopping mall. And then I've used various cap rates of that NOI to arrive at a value. If I take the actual 54,775 and I use the assessor's cap rate of 6.5%, I get a value of 842,692. If I use the cap rate that was used in the last reference period of 7.5%, I get a value of 730,333. And if I try to be reasonable and pick something in between, at 7%, I get a value of 782,500. Those numbers are different from my original submission because I noted in my original submission that I had an amount for management that is not that is recovered in the lease, and I had used a vacancy allowance of 4% instead of 3%. So I've tried to use the same methodology as the assessment department, but I've used the actual rate, which I believe to be a fair rate, and I believe the evidence is that it is a fair rate. And then I provided varying cap rates to that revised NOI to come up with a value. I don't believe that when you have a single restaurant that the size of the building should really reduce the cap rate. I think the reason why that you're seeing maybe evidence of a lower cap rate on a single standalone restaurant is that those restaurants are chain restaurants. So my suggestion is that we use the actual rental rate and use a revised cap rate. I attempted to have some discussions with the assessor to resolve this so we wouldn't have to do this at the hearing. And my suggestion is that we have a cap rate of 7%, which arrives at a value of 782,500.
So that's the Your figure on page 4 is different.
Yes, I think, and the reason it is different,
So instead of using the 7.5, you're going 7?
yes. In my experience and being before the board, I have seen, and looking at the rate study, I'm seeing information that shows that the rates have come down from the previous cycle, but I don't believe this subject property will command a rate of 6.5%. Not for a non-chain restaurant.
So for the record, you're at 782,500. Is that correct?
Correct,
And is that your presentation?
yes.
I thank you. Questions of the applicant?
I do. I have a few questions. I see on page 4 that you've included the Pizza and Dollarama as comparables. The area of Dollarama is about approximately 5,800 square feet. Would you consider that a comparable property to the subject in question that we're speaking of?
The rates for I also note that the rates for the Pizza and the Dollarama are $19 and $19.50 a square foot. And the
Okay.
subject is 27.
Yep. Okay, but I understand that. I just wanted to just probe a little bit to see if the size of the Dollarama, the use of the building would be comparable to a standalone. But if you believe it to be comparable, then we can move on to the next question. So we spoke about the A&W. Are you aware that the A&W gets a rent rate of $35.31 a square foot?
Yes.
Okay, so $35.31 for a chain, $27 for a non-chain. There does seem to be some adjustment for the fact that it's not a chain restaurant. How did you arrive to your recommended cap rate of? Actually, I wrote 7.5%. I didn't realize that we had revised it to 7%. Is that's what
That's what I'm submitting today.
Okay, and how did you arrive to your cap rate of 7% on that?
I believe that's a fair rate.
You believe it's a fair rate? Okay. Okay, I have no more questions.
I thank you. Ms. Billinghurst? Mr. Stenning? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Do you have anything?
No, that's okay.
Mr. Stenning?
Okay, I've been a bit confused with some of the numbers you've been changing. Are you saying you've agreed that you now you go 7% instead of 7.5%, is that correct?
Yes.
And what-
Based on the actual rental rate, using the parameters.
And now, and what
The
NOI?
NOI I've got is $54,775.
So you've upped that too, from your original.
I've used,
Your original, I think, was 45,601?
No, it's 54,001.
54,001.
That's what I was
Okay.
confused about how
Okay.
you arrived
Yeah.
at the 70.
So you've changed your NOI?
right, because in my original workup, I had included a deduction for, I believe, vacancy allowance of 4%, and I've revised it to 3%, which is the same as the
Okay.
assessors.
Okay.
Okay, so just give me that one more time.
So I start with, we agree on the square footage of 2153,
Yeah,
and I've used $27 a square foot, which is referenced twice in the assessor's brief.
Yep.
So that's 58,131. From that, I deduct a 3% vacancy, which is 1744, to achieve an effective gross income of 56,387.
okay,
The expenses are 2% of gross income, that's 1128. And the shortfall is still 484, to arrive at an NOI of 54,775. My evidence was that on the assessor's brief from 2000 and recommendation was that the subject property had a cap rate of 7.5%. And that was my original submission. The assessor is suggesting that the cap rate should be 6.5%.
I got that.
And I have tried to be reasonable, and I picked 7% as the middle rate.
Do you know what the cap rate is on the other businesses that are on that lot?
I believe the cap rate on the Pizza and the Dollarama is 7.75, and the cap rate on the A&W is lower. But it's lower for the very reasons that were discussed. It's a national chain restaurant and it's much larger.
Would it be unfair to ask what if you have a standalone or a local business that's on a property that has some national chains, franchises next to it, so that would be a bonus?
I believe a restaurant is a destination. So if you're suggesting that if I can't get into the A&W, I'm gonna go into the Copper Chimney, I don't.
No, I didn't say that.
I don't know. This is, it's a standalone on a separate piece of property. The other property has a pizza and a Dollarama. Those tenants are fairly recent. There have been a number of tenants that have gone through that property, that strip, part of the property. The A&W is the constant,
It's been there a long time, A&W.
I believe so.
When did the Dollarama go in there?
I believe in the last cycle, not this current cycle, the previous cycle, and the same with the Pizza. There used to be, I believe, a doctor or some other type of operation.
So, to cut to the chase, you're now saying 782,590, that's correct?
782,500.
500, well,
Yeah,
no,
that's-
$90, that's all right.
54,775 divided by 0.07, 782,500. That's, I believe, is my best estimate of the value.
Okay, no, that's fine, I appreciate that, and that's all I would need, thank you.
I have no questions. Summation, if you so desire.
No, I believe, once again, that we have taken a look, and it seems to be that within the parameters that are, that the subject property was valued appropriately. And we believe that we have a fair value on there for the property.
Mr. Leslie, final word?
I believe the department should have, when they determined that the $27 was a fair rate, they should have used the $27 and then applied the parameters. And I also believe that 6.5% for a standalone local restaurant is to determine what a willing buyer would pay the willing seller is, the risk attached to a local restaurant is greater than a chain. And so I believe 7% is a fair cap rate. That's my submission, thank you.
I thank you. You're no stranger here, and you'll get results very shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming this afternoon. Mr. Badger, you are up, and we're going to be dealing with McMillan, 423 McMillan Avenue. So we'll have you affirmed or sworn in, either one.
Can I put that on there?
Swear?
Make forward
I'll
though.
just go
Say
one.
your name.
Jim
My
Badger.
own.
Swear that you
Oh,
don't
there
want to throw
you
it after
go.
you.
Perfect.
I realized I forgot that when I was walking over.
There
you go.
I don't need all that.
Why not?
Just the actual 15
Okay.
minutes, so. Thank you.
Where are we now?
423 McMillan.
Item number 3.
Yes,
This is
there is a
cooperation.
there's non-co-op issue, so you
There's
can,
another one.
you can read the roll number, et cetera, and
Okay.
tell us about the property and tell us about that.
Okay. So the civic address for the property in question is 423 McMillan Avenue. The roll number is 1202 124 1000. I would also like to begin by searching for the burden of proof to be placed on the applicant for a non-cooperation. Section 53, 3B of the MAA, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54, 3.2 of the MAA.
All right. Mr. Badger, your comments in regards to the non-compliance?
I don't have any comments on the argument against it.
Okay, then I think we don't have to have any meeting or anything like that. So Mr. Badger, under the rules, you will be presenting first, sir.
Okay, so the subject property is 423 McMillan Avenue. It's just east of the Confusion Corner in the Gordon Village neighborhood. The building was built in 3 stages. The total square footage is, I think it's around 7,500 square feet. The property's had a bit of a checkered history in terms of the tenancy. A lot of that, I would say, is indicative of the unique location, the type of building. The location notwithstanding, it's in the Gordon Village area by Confusion Corner. It's east, where the access to the property is a little bit more difficult to get to, and there's a restriction on parking on the front street of the building. And the overall property, I believe it's only has 12 parking stalls on the property for a building that's 7,500 square feet is pretty small. The other issue, the building is very plain. It's a plain Jane. I mentioned well, first of all, maybe just on the plain Jane. The assessor, I was out of town last week, and the assessor contacted me to see if he can go in and take a look at it, and I wasn't able to. I was out of town, so I wasn't able to arrange for it. But what I do, I have some photos here that were taken approximately 2 years old, and to my knowledge, nothing's been done since. But I can pass this out and circulate it.
Well, that's really new evidence, so it's not going to be allowed. So it should be included in your brief, so that won't be allowed.
Okay. The building is basically, it's wide open. It's just a plain Jane T-bar ceiling. The only partition in the building that is, there is a kitchen facility, a commercial kitchen facility where they prepare food. The building is open because it's a billiard lounge, and they have approximately 68 billiard tables. Then it has a dance floor, all open area there, and they got movable furnishings around the overall premises for sitting down and having your beer or whatever and your food. I mentioned that it had a checkered history. It was known as the Barca Club for a period of about 20 years, 25 years. It ceased, the Barca Club ceased operation in 2012. In 2012, the Barca Club was paying $4,000 per month. It was released to a new operator at $4,400 per month. That's in 2012. To the Pulse Club. That particular operator only lasted 1 year. In 2013, he defaulted, and the property was reverted back to the previous operator of the club. and opened up as what they call the chill. The chill lasted for 3 years in 26, and failed in 2016. In 2016, it was released to another individual at $4,500 per month. He's operating as the Sonic Club. I think part of the problem, billiards is not as popular as it used to be, and it's not a very high intensified use in that it doesn't, I mean, it's got a large seating capacity because of the aggregate size, but with the billiard lounge, you're not gonna have the capacity like a restaurant would. In terms of comparables, I didn't include any comparables because it's quite difficult because there's not too many billiard lounges left around town. If you go into my financial number, which is my evaluation summary, which is Exhibit 1, the third page, I'm not disputing, I don't have any problems with the square footage of the assessor. You'll see here, I done 2 columns here. The left side is the assessor's workup, or the computer model workup on it. And the right-hand side is my workup on it. I'm in agreement to the size, I'm in agreement to the cap rate, I'm in agreement to the other inputs for the model to come up with the evaluation. My only disagreement is the rent. Because it's so difficult to find rents, I believe that the current rent, it's at arm's length, is we should be using is the market rent. The current rent is $54,000 per year, or $7.16 per square foot. If I work those numbers through and come down to the bottom, it gives me a value of just under $600,000 versus the assessment department's $850,000. What I'd like to do is just summarize, I'm sorry to flip you back and forth, but look at my second page. I just want to, there's been some histories in the building, and there's been some decreases in evaluation at past appeal hearings. In the 2014 cycle, you see it was lowered from 764 to 609 to reflect sort of the, in 2014 I was actually using the same rents again as before, and the tenant's rent that was being used at that time. 2016 it was dropped to 786 down to 640,000. The owner of the property didn't appeal it in 2018. The assessment in 2020 is now $853,000, which is a 16% increase over the previous cycle, or it's a 33% increase over the last time that we've appealed it, and that was 4 years ago. I just think the jump in the value, there's a reason before, and that's because in 2018, I guess we didn't, it wasn't appealed. So I just wanted to point that out there. So in summary, I'm saying that because the difficulty of the site, the age of the building, the location, some of its factors about the parking access and street access, etc. I'm suggesting the rent that we should be using is the rent that the operator is paying as being the market rate, which would support the value of just under $600,000.
Thank you, Mr. Badger. Questions?
Sure, Mr. Badger has a few questions for you. In your deductions here, have you deducted the 5% management fee? It's hard for me to be able to...
The $5,400 is the net rent that the operator is paying. I deducted the 6%. The same percentage you deducted.
Okay.
Well, it's a vacancy of 6%.
And then no management deduction?
No management deduction. No.
Okay.
There was that other operating expense?
Yep, I just wanted to confirm that.
Shortfall, okay.
Okay. Would it be possible for you to provide us with any sort of information regarding the property? An income and expense questionnaire, a lease? We really have nothing to go on with this property, so it's
my note 1 on my page, I'm saying the actual rent is $4,500. If you want me to get a copy of these, I can send that to you.
It would be nice, yes, sir, so we could have some details on the on the financials on the property, as we have nothing really on it. We haven't had a mailer returned to us for a while. Has anything happened to the property recently that would justify the reduction in the rental rate that you're currently seeking for, or?
I'm saying that the market rental rate has never gone up to, what you're talking about, the rent's actually higher than what they used to pay, the previous operator. But I don't have any information to compare it against yours, a reduction from yours. I'm saying use the actual. It's gone through 4 operators, there's been 4 lease renewals that will keep telling you the history of that. The rates have always been lower than market and then for this particular property.
What's the start date on the lease currently in place?
I don't know the exact month on it, but it was 2016.
Okay. Thank you. I believe that's everything. I have no more questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Billinghurst,
No questions.
Mr. Stang.
Have you represented this property before?
Yes.
Thought so, yeah, I think I sat on that. So, the assessed value at $736,000 to $218,000, that was not appealed, is that correct? Is that what you
That's
said?
correct, yes.
Were you involved in it at that time?
No. I was involved in the ones where you see the reductions.
So it was, I mean, and I'm only assuming the assessed value previously was $786, so it dropped to $736, and that's probably why they didn't appeal it. Would that make sense?
I couldn't really say. I'm
No,
sorry.
I know you can't, but that's all that's all I've got to. And now you want to drop it to $592. And you have no lease of any kind?
Well, I asked the owner what the rate was, and I believe the owner has given me proper representation.
I think this, so they have I don't think last time they gave any facts or figures either. So it's pretty difficult, isn't it, if we don't know, we don't get some information, which is.
I understand that, we're gonna get penalized heavily.
Do you know who the owner of the property is?
Yeah, I believe it's in Composite Holdings, LTD.
Yeah, so it's not the people that are leasing then?
Unfortunately, it's a net lease, so the operator, who's not a very sophisticated operator, he's the one that's responsible, and he has the right to appeal, but the owner came around this cycle and said, maybe we should do something. Well, I know the lease right now is up for renewal, it's a 3-year term. The owner believes he's not gonna be able to get he can't pass a rent increase through because the guy's not doing quite well. But, so the rent's gonna be held. But the owner feels he's trying to do what he can to keep the tenant in there. It's rather have it filled than have it empty. The owner he did tell me today he replaced half the roof at his expense and didn't have to, because it is a net lease, but he said he's been doing things for the operator so the operator can stay in business.
Yeah, that's all I have, thank you very much.
Thank you, I have no questions. We'll now hear from the assessor, your presentation.
Okay, so the subject property we're speaking of, 423 McMillan Avenue, roll number 1202, 124, 1000. So if I can direct your attention to page 8, I have included the photographic evidence which shows the location, the parcel's location on our neighborhood map. We have an overhead photographic map that shows the parcel's location. And finally, we have the Google Street View photographic evidence from the October 2018 layer that was in place. Our income stream for this property is, it consists of a leasable area that we have on file of 7,540 square feet at the rental rate of $10.13 a square foot. We have a 6% vacancy. That vacancy loss has been included on the income stream. 2% expense with a shortfall at $6.50 per square foot, which gives us a net operating income of $67,420. And when we apply our cap rate of 7.9%, we have a market value of $853,000. For our comparables, I have included several different listings on page 3, on page 3 of my brief. I have included several different comparables, and they show the range from $11.75 at the lower end to $19 at the higher end. And I have included several nightclubs that are comparable, in my opinion, in use to how the subject property is currently being used. And I believe that without any income and expense mailer information, we really are going on the best of our knowledge on the property characteristics, and until we receive any sort of information that would give us clarity on the property characteristics, I believe that the parameters we have in place are fair and reasonable for the property in question.
I thank you.
That's my presentation.
Mr. Badger, questions of the assessor?
Yes. On your comparables there, the last 3?
Yep.
Are they all on sort of one complex there? That's at the corner of Donald and
They are,
Wardlaw?
that's correct. 2 of them are. 326 Wardlaw, they're both in one building, and 2 Donald Street is also nearby.
Yeah, but they have a shared parking lot there, I believe, in front, don't they, behind the Donald Gas Bar?
I don't think so, no. I think that they're separate parcels. Doesn't the 2 Donald Street, that's where the joint therapy is, and there's a yoga studio there. I can't recall there being a parking lot between the 2 as they're on separate parcels.
They're, they have access off of Wardlaw, and they also have access both north-south off of Donald?
The Wardlaw property would have access off Wardlaw, that's correct, and the Donald property, there's access off Donald, and there's another cross street as well that goes off of Donald there. The name's available.
112 Osmond Street, you mentioned that's another pub or
Yep, that's correct.
nightclub, I guess you call it.
Nightclub pub, yeah, sure.
Yeah, do they have billiards in there?
They do have 2 pool tables. I was there in personal capacity under a year ago, and they do have 2 personal billiards from my recollection.
But is it sort of operated as a billiard?
It's not a billiard club, no. It's operated as a pub, it just has 2 tables for the patrons if they want to play some pool while they're having.
It's up, down?
Pardon?
And the space is up, down?
There's 2 floors to the space,
2
that's
floors
correct.
to the space,
Yeah,
that's
there's 2
what I
floors.
figured. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions.
I thank you. Ms. Billinghurst?
All model driven?
These parameters are all model driven, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stenning?
The comps that you've got here, they're all, you say they're all pretty well the same, in the same area. Now,
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't matter really, because they're all higher than, what would you say would be probably your best comp on here, if that's possible?
If I could give my personal opinion on the best comparable, I would say in terms of use, it would be it would most likely be the OV Club. The square footage is a little bit less, but it's used in a similar manner, and
Which one is this?
it would be the first, 108 Osborne Street, sorry.
You say the square foot would be less?
Yep, I would say it is less than square
Oh, the
foot,
square
but
foot, I'm
its
sorry,
use
yeah,
is,
okay.
its use can be very similar
Okay.
to my understanding of how the 423 McMillan
Yeah.
property is used. So I would say between the two, that one and also the toad in the hole are both, in my opinion, very, very good indicators of what the market value would be for a lease to be used in that manner. So they are higher than the subject property, but I believe that, in my opinion, it reflects the location. It reflects the established reputation that these tenants currently have in the spaces there. And I believe it's shown in the market value that's indicated, $14 and $19, as opposed to what we value at $10.13.
Okay.
I believe that to be very, very reasonable. And again, we're also going on next to no information. We have nothing to.
Right, I understand.
We've attempted to get data from the property over several cycles, and we haven't received anything in return.
So you haven't been in that property on the?
I attempted to do a inspection. Like Mr. Badger was saying, we couldn't communicate, or we couldn't find a time as he was busy. I had attempted to get in contact with the contact information provided by Mr. Badger for, I believe it would be the owner of the property. I couldn't get a hold of anyone either, so I did do a drive-by inspection earlier in the week, just to make sure that the property characteristics are still the same as what I have it from the research that I did at the office. So the best I could do is just do an outside inspection, just to make sure that those characteristics seem to be consistent with what we have back at the office, and that's all I could do for
So
this
you should
property.
have got a couple of your buddies and gone to play pole then.
We could have gone in personal
You would have
capacity.
gone in
Yeah.
dubious matter.
Well,
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Badger, final word, summation, if you want.
Final word, the only one I say, I just want to correct you, if you don't mind, I was out of town, not busy.
Oh, sorry.
It was just last week, and I was, unfortunately, I would have liked to take him, and I would have arranged it. And I'm sorry to hear that the owner didn't, I tried to connect you with
Yeah.
him,
didn't work out.
but,
Summation?
Basically, the only thing I can say is I really believe that the subject property's location, it's funny, you know, for the last 25 years, my whole business is primarily in inner city work. And it's amazing when I can always remember building an apartment building downtown St. Paul. You're 2 blocks away or one block away from the area. You can be out of luck. It's amazing how it can affect you. It's more sensitive rather than being on the suburbs and being along Pembina Highway. It doesn't matter if you're 1 mile up or 3 miles up. I would say because this thing is tucked around the corner, it hasn't got the street access, hasn't got the same sense of place as the other ones, because the other ones have, like on Osborne Street, they have all this traffic. Dominion's, keep calling it the Domo Center, with the 3 there. It's more visible. People roll in, roll out, and it's for the things there. And it's too bad I couldn't say it, but this building is a very plain Jane building that's gone through so many. The tenants themselves, I gave you a listing of all the tenants that have been turned over there. In my mind, that's indicative of what's wrong with the building and its location. So it's time, I think, to sort of retool it, rethink it, because it's not working as a nightclub. That's the reason why the rents are lower. If someone was to come in today and just buy it as is, you'd be looking at the leases that are in place, lease history, and they'll be using that as their evaluation in terms of potential purchase of the property.
I thank you, sir. Summation, if you want.
Yeah, just to summation, I would just like to say that, again, we have no information in regards to the particulars of the finances. And based on what we have, based on my comparables, I would say that the rate that's currently applied is a fair rate. And I believe that we have it correctly assessed at the value that it's currently at.
I thank you. Mr. Badger, I think that concludes your hearing, so thank you for coming this afternoon, and results very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.